We're going to look at the Warfront video explaining the India-Pakistan conflict, which I actually don't know much about. I'm not educated. Honestly, I don't pay much attention right now to the world, which feels very, very healthy. Let's take a look.
Right now, two nuclear-armed nations stand at the precipice of an all-out war.
Oh, his voice.
A shocking terror attack. Hindi tourists in the disputed region of Kashmir.
So what happened is in Kashmir, there was Hindi tourists, I think even foreigners, even in Italian, I think. And they got killed by radical Islamists, like people. And it looks like these people are close to Pakistan or something.
The bitter South Asian rivals, India and Pakistan, have leapt at each other's throats, exchanging fire, cutting off a critical water supply, and moving military assets in a way that suggests large-scale violence may be imminent. India appears to be building a pretext to strike Pakistan directly. Pakistan is making clear that it will defend itself at any cost, and attempts by the entire rest of the world to bring a stop to the crisis have failed. The fragile peace between India and Pakistan, it is crumbling
3 days ago,
as we speak. So here's
and they have
what
not yet
we
bombed each other to
are
shit.
going to need to know in advance of whatever comes next.
True, if I do politics, I need to flag my stream. Thank you so much. Oh, I totally forgot. Yeah, I need to flag my stream. Thank you, I fully forgot that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On Twitch, you now have to flag your content, as you could get triggered by politics, because the snowflakes are, you know. Oh, yeah. Be careful. Thank you so much. That was very helpful, dude. Every time I do politics, tell me to do this, chat. I need to flag my stream. Thank you, Quebecer. Thank you so much. And Canned Noodle, what is your deep dive, my dude? You want a deep dive? What is it?
Now, before we begin, we've got to issue a key caveat here. Everything that we discuss in today's episode is up to date as of sunrise, Monday the 28th of April in New Delhi and Islamabad. Anything that's happened since that time will not be accounted for in this episode, and in this case, that is especially important to bear in mind. Look, judging by the pace of escalation on both sides going on right now, it's not safe to assume that this conflict will remain in a phase of preparation and build up for any length of time. So do rest assured that if war has already broken out by the time you see this, then we already have an update coming. Now, the current crisis in India and Pakistan began about a week ago on the 22nd of April in a meadow called the Baisaran Valley, a few kilometers away from the resort town of Pahalgam. Now, that town...
Shit, that was good timing. Thank you, Markich, bro. Ukrainian brother, man. As I said 2 years ago, Markich, when that fucking war's over, you are the only viewer I will ever invite to my house. You're coming over here, we're taking care of you, man. We're gonna have you make a good time, you and your girl. Survive that shit, and then you come over here and we take care of you. We do some streams together, I show you some good food, bro. It sounds really corny, but thank you for your service, Markich. Because you know me, I believe the Ukrainians are currently defending European sovereignty, man. They're defending Europeans. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, Markich. Thank you, Hedonian. Thank you, guys. Swinger party? With him, I will do it. Markich is a very sexy guy.
Is located in the Himalayan mountains in a region known as Jammu and Kashmir that's been the focus of a dispute.
Question first, though. Why do they fight over this region? Is there resources in there? Because why would they fight over a region that's just basically a bunch of fucking mountains, man, right?
Between India and Pakistan for nearly a century.
Kashmir is a region in India. Kashmir are Kashmiri. They're not Hindus, but they're also Muslims. In 2019, India revoked the Kashmir autonomy status.
Now for
the water is important there. Ah, it's all about the water. Oh.
For the sake of time, we'll...
Oh, yeah. And as I always say on the stream, I believe in the water wars. Water will be a very, very important resource in the next 100 years with global warming.
Leave an explanation on the history of this conflict
clever,
for another episode, but suffice it to say that for now, while
90%
India
of
and Pakistan have agreed to split the region along a mutually accepted line of control,
in a way, right? I predicted this shit. The water wars are coming, man.
Remains the site of both
Sudan
ongoing insurgencies and geopolitical rivalry between the two nations. Pahalgam is in the Indian-controlled part of Kashmir.
It's beautiful. If you show me this, I will think this is Colorado in the USA or something.
Despite the conflict in the region, Pahalgam itself has been a safe, popular tourist destination in a place where fighting is typically kept well away from tourist areas. But on April the 22nd, the tranquility of Pahalgam was shattered when 5 armed gunmen attacked a large group of tourists in the nearby Baisaran Valley. Wielding assault rifles and wearing military-style fatigues, the gunmen snuck through the sparse local security and began to interrogate the tourists they encountered. Muslims were separated out. First, if they could recite a verse of Islamic prayer, and then...
Dude, I swear to fucking God, chat, I'm gonna say something crazy. With all the terrorism in the last 20 years, I always felt that if you ever meet a terrorist that wants to kill you, you could probably outplay them if you have a bit of Quran knowledge. Like, I thought about this sometimes. Imagine you're in a shopping mall and radical Islamic terrorists kill everyone. And they're like, oh, no. Imagine you just go, the Prophet says in Surah 12:3 that you shall not eat pig. And you're like, oh, okay, I will not kill you, okay. It's like, I mean, it sounds weird. But in this, it sounds weird. They won't care. In this case, they were actually interrogating. And if you could show you're Muslim, they wouldn't shoot you. With 100 speech. They will check for circumcision too. I mean, it's mentally fucking ill to even think shit like this, right? But I don't know, I always felt if you can somehow trick them that you're Muslim, you will have maybe a 2% chance of saving your life. Not a high chance, but you know, just like this. Oh God, here we go. Do I click this? Yeah, like this. How did you find that so fast, bro?
Good Lord, protecting.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. Coffee's done. I'm gonna come in a sec.
And they asked the other men to show whether they were circumcised, a common practice in the Muslim
Oh, if you're circumcised, you are Muslim. Okay, they will fucking kill me.
world. Hindu men who did
They will
not
kill me,
pass
dude.
the two tests were
But with all the respect, though, I mean, this is a bit disrespectful to the dead, but don't do vacation in Kashmir? Hey guys, what's up? My name is Daniel, and today's vlog is in Gaza Strip. Oh no, I wonder, why did I die? Sorry, maybe that's a bit insensitive.
executed at close range, while women and children present at the scene were spared. 26 people were executed in the attack,
26.
including 24 Hindus, a Christian, and a local Muslim man who had
Why did the Muslim man die, though? This is so... I mean, you probably can't even find any logic with these gunmen. They're just completely mentally ill, incestuous maniacs.
tried to intervene. 20 others were wounded, and the insurgents escaped, at least for a while. Credit for the attack was claimed publicly by a group called the Resistance Front, or TRF, a recently established organization that first became active in 2019.
Imagine you're actually Muslim, but you don't know any Quran verses. I mean, yeah, they killed a Muslim. What the fuck happened there? It's because he tried to stop them. Oh, man.
They're an offshoot, a
So
subsidiary by some accounts, and
so
a splinter
fucking
group by others, from a well-established
unnecessary.
Pakistan-based jihadist insurgent group called Lashkar-e-Taiba. This is an organization with a long history of attacks on India, including the days-long siege of the city of Mumbai in 2008.
That looks like a movie. That looked like a
Over
movie, bro.
160 people were killed and Westerners were hunted down. Like the Resistance Front,
There's a movie about that, I think.
Lashkar-e-Taiba's primary objective is to break India's control over
Wait,
Kashmir.
I said it's a movie, and then I said there's a movie about this, yeah.
Thus
There's a
allowing it
movie
to be
about
annexed
a
by
Western
Pakistan.
family in a hotel.
The Resistance Front is
And
somewhat
they
less
have to
overtly religious in
escape
its
this shit.
messaging and is prominent on social media for recruiting purposes, but in terms of its overall goals, it
This is
and
not a deep dive.
Lashkar-e-Taiba are on fundamentally the same page. Now, critically, India accuses Pakistan of directly supporting the groups, fomenting attacks, granting them safe harbor, and benefiting from their violent work to advance Pakistan's long-held objectives.
So look, he shut up before I
Now,
ban
from
you,
the
you
moment that
retard.
news of the Pahalgam massacre began to spread across the globe, it was clear that the geopolitical implications could be major. As if to confirm those suspicions, India immediately accused Pakistan of being behind the attack, citing digital evidence and intelligence intercepts that implicated Pakistani operatives in a supporting role. India has yet to produce conclusive evidence for the world to see, but that did not stop a first round of reprisal measures against Pakistan from coming within just a day's time. India announced 5 retaliatory steps in total, including the closure of the primary border crossing that links India and Pakistan, the expulsion of Pakistani diplomats, a travel ban on all Pakistani nationals to India, and an order for Pakistani visa holders to leave India immediately. India formally downgraded its ties with Pakistan and issued information on 3 suspects, 2 of whom it claims to be Pakistani. Now, the most important retaliatory measure, by far, was the suspension of a critical agreement called the Indus Waters Treaty, a compact first
It's interesting how a lot of modern wars, like Israel-Palestine, have a lot to do with water. You guys remember when they shut down the water to Gaza, man?
signed in 1960
It
to
sucks if your enemy has your water supply, huh?
establish control and sharing arrangements over the waters of the Indus River and several other important rivers. Up until now, the treaty has never been suspended, despite multiple violent conflicts, and it's been hailed as one of the most successful water-sharing arrangements
water
worldwide.
Is such an important asset already.
The water of the Indus River and other governed water sources flows from India into Pakistan, giving India practical leverage over the rivers if it ever chooses to take action.
The water was
Pakistan has long regarded the potential suspension of the treaty as a major national security threat, both because India could withhold water from Pakistan and cause crippling droughts, and because it could release the water in massive floods traveling downstream.
Turkey and Syria have the same?
80% of farms in Pakistan rely on waters governed by the treaty, and the nation has already suffered consecutive years of drought, meaning that a long-term cut-off of water could be crippling for Pakistan in the long term. So for India to suspend the treaty in the wake of the Pahalgam attack sent two very frightening signals all at once. First, it indicated that India's assessment of the terror attack must have either showed conclusively that Pakistan was responsible, or to take a cynical view here, it had decided to use the attack as pretext for a major escalation. And second, given the magnitude of the threshold that India just crossed, India
These
most likely
rivers
wants to
originate in
make
China. China could cut both India and Pakistan off if they want to.
It clear that it will not be backing down. Pakistan issued its own series of retaliations in short order, closing its airspace to Indian airlines and giving a sharp condemnation of India's decision to suspend the water treaty. The nation suspended a very special visa category granted to Indians, with the exception of Sikh pilgrims, and suspended all trade with India, including trade deals in goods exchanged through third nations. Pakistan suspended its own historic treaty, the similar agreement signed in 1962, which establishes principles governing the carefully managed peace between the two nations, including a ceasefire in Kashmir. Pakistan accused India of, fomenting terrorism inside Pakistan, and stated it would consider all bilateral agreements and treaties with India to be suspended until India ended its alleged sponsorship of terrorism. Perhaps most important of all, going back to the Indus Waters Treaty, Pakistan vowed to consider any attempt to stop or divert water allotted for Pakistan as an act of war, one that would draw full military retaliation from Pakistan. Then, the provocation started. Overnight on the 24th, troops of both nations exchanged fire overnight across the mutually agreed line of control, particularly in an area called the Lipa Valley. The shooting continued on the next night and on the next, with soldiers using small arms to fire into each other's vicinity in a growing number of locations. By the night of the 26th, Pakistan had deployed self-propelled artillery, and the skirmishers shown no signs of stopping. Indian aircraft carrier INS Vikrant was dispatched to the Arabian Sea, while its latest guided missile destroyer, the Surat, conducted a live-fire missile interception and shot down a sea.
I don't know, Shekel. Israel doesn't look that good lately, do they? I don't think you want me to react.
Skimming target.
Russia gave it to them?
India's military readiness. Ongoing exercises by the Indian Air Force have intensified, and military assets have begun moving rapidly across the country. In India, in Pakistan, and among the diaspora of both nationalities worldwide, protests began around diplomatic locations, with protesters supporting each nation clashing abroad at times. Meanwhile, in India-controlled Kashmir, Indian security forces cracked down on suspected terrorists, with skirmishes breaking out that have left several soldiers and several militants dead so far. In the process, security forces destroyed the homes of people suspected of being involved with the attack. Finally, India demonstrated that it was willing to meddle with the rivers governed by the Indus Waters Treaty. Although India cannot immediately cut off the flow of water because it's only allowed by treaty to build installations that calm down those rivers, it released much of the water that it can store.
Not USSR, actually the real Russia. Pakistan is actually listed as a major non-NATO ally. So NATO gave it to them.
On a river called the Jhelum. According to the Times of India, water was released from a dam without notice after heavy rain, sending floodwaters downstream to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Residents were able to evacuate, and Pakistan appears not to have interpreted that threat as the act of war that it warned against, but it may only be a glimpse of what's to come. In the short term, monsoon season is coming, and Pakistan would be powerless to stop a rush of surplus water into the nation unannounced. India could divert water to its own canals.
Twitter said this might be the stinkiest one in history. I tend to disagree, but I told him.
In the short term, while large-scale dams could take anywhere from a couple of years.
I swear to God, the first thing in World War III is everybody's going to blow up dams, like they did in Crimea. Everyone will blow up dams, bro.
To the better part of a decade.
For example, I read an article about this. When Sudan and Ethiopia will fight over the water of the Nile, Sudan will bomb, or probably already has planted bombs on that dam they built on the beginning of the Nile, so the water can come
to finish. India has
Up to
indicated
Sudan.
that it will not share flood warnings with Pakistan in the future, and it'll withhold any information from Pakistan that would indicate how much water is coming downstream or when it'll arrive. Now, at the time of writing, India and Pakistan have not entered a large-scale conflict. But according to most expert observers in the region, a harsh retaliation by India seems to be an
Will that
inevitable.
flood Sudan? I don't think so, because Sudan was always doing well with the way the Nile worked, and the dam was just built, I think, in the last 10 years. So they were doing well when the Ethiopian dam did not exist.
In fact, reporting by the
you see
New York
local
Times
UK lectures? I
suggests
did
that
not.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is working overtime to explain its justifications for a
I
strike
didn't pay much
on
attention to politics
Pakistan
lately. I
and
just
the
know
international
Australia was
community.
having elections.
Further
They
times,
actually
Modi
elected
has
well.
received and
They didn't elect
spoken
the
with
Trump
over
idiot.
100 representatives of other nations, and according to diplomatic sources, he's working to secure either approval or at least a tacit agreement not to get in the way from the officials that he's meeting with.
Canada had
Publicly,
also elections.
Modi has
Oh.
vowed severe
let's
retaliation
check,
and threatened to destroy areas that militants
the
in
after this.
Kashmir rely on for safe haven.
I'm gonna do some
Modi's
politics,
harsh response
okay?
has been well received
wanna
domestically,
politics, I don't know.
with much of India outraged over the deliberate targeting of Hindu civilians in the terror attack.
Thank you,
in
Alexander.
Pahalgam.
Great. Thank you.
For years, Modi's political movement
Trump is ruling conservatism is stupid. I read a thing today on social media from this guy, intelligent guy, and he said a beautiful thing that was interesting, at least interesting, Canned Noodle. Okay, Canned Noodle, calm down. He said, conservatism is now in its last version. You always have conservatives in history, but there's always this point where conservatives realize that they have been voting for the wolf. And he was arguing we're now in the end game of the current conservatist wave, and then it flips over. It happens all the time in history. What I mean is, you're a conservative, you vote for Trump, you vote for MAGA, you like Elon. But slowly it gets cracks. You're like, wait, Trump isn't really for me. He's for the rich. He's a bit of an idiot. What are these? Elon has all my data, and there's this little child called the ball man that takes care of Doge. And the conservatives are slowly like, is this working out? And then it always brings this big flip. It's always this big flipping all the time, man. It's an interesting thought, man.
has drawn on the power of Hindu nationalism in the world's most populous nation, and now anti-Muslim sentiment
The Democrats
in
are
India
not for the rich. I'm talking about conservatives. We're talking about humans here. We're not talking about the two parties.
is rising rapidly. Abroad, few nations have the type of meaningful leverage over.
You can't compare this to global conservatism. I think you can if you look at conservatism in Germany, where 25% have been polled to vote for the AfD, a party that provingly, factually, is against 90% of its voter, which would mean if you're conservative and you vote for the AfD, after a while you realize, wait, my vote for the AfD has not improved my life, it only helped the rich, and nothing has gotten better. And that's like the endgame conservatism, where it's like, this is actually not for me. These people actually don't give a shit about me.
Modi that could prevent India's leader from escalating if he so
Is
chooses.
the CDU also conservative? Same. The CDU has been the biggest disgrace for Germany. The CDU has, in my opinion, destroyed Germany. 16 years of Angela Merkel, no digitalization, making us dependent on Russia, etc., etc., etc. I guarantee you, clip me on this in 4 years. The new government of Germany is going to fail in 4 years. Everyone will still be mad, and they're going to vote AfD.
And
It's all-
those nations that could put a stop to what's happening don't appear inclined to do that. As for what comes next, past action may
Anyway,
help
let's
to
finish this video
predict
first
future
before we
conflict.
go insane.
India and Pakistan have fought
Before
several
Candle goes
wars since
insane.
the partition of India in 1947 with varying results. Their first war, fought over Kashmir in 1947 and 1948, ended
hope they had
with a
mountaineers.
stalemate that sometimes interpreted as a partial victory for India establishing the line of control in Kashmir that still governs affairs to this day.
GG's
In 1965, India
Thank you,
got
Ozzy, for the 60,
better of a
buddy.
six-week-long
Thank you, dude.
war, while in 1971,
Imagine
India
going
was
to war
able
with
to
armor
beat
like this,
back
man. You
an
just wear a
initial
shirt.
Pakistani assault
Jesus.
and force the surrender of over 90,000 Pakistani troops. In a more limited engagement, the Kargil War of 1999, Pakistan provoked a war that was quickly drawn down due to international pressure.
I have a weird question. I'm uneducated. On which sides are the Sikh on? They're Indians, right? Sikhs are not Muslims. There are some subgroup of Hindus, right?
In yet
The
another
Sikhs are
defeat for the
fighting for
Pakistani
India,
military.
right?
Other engagements since that time have consisted
Yeah, they're
of smaller
mostly Indian,
skirmishes
okay,
before a rather hurried return to the status quo. The good news to take away from that
Indians.
quick history is that these two nuclear-armed nations have
Six.
proven adept at
Six.
avoiding a nuclear exchange so far.
They have a
Pakistan
sick army,
gained the
bro.
ability to detonate a nuclear weapon around 1984. India tested its first weapon a decade earlier.
man, this is
and
like my old
today,
phone, dude.
each side possesses an arsenal at or above 170 warheads. Neither side has yet launched a nuclear weapon in anger, and for now, the current conflict doesn't outwardly seem to be on track for a nuclear exchange. So that's something to count on at a moment where good news in this crisis is pretty hard to come by. But both in terms of their nuclear and their conventional weapons, the most important factor that may differentiate this conflict from prior exchanges for India and Pakistan is the degree to which their respective militaries have evolved. Pakistan has acquired hundreds of modern main battle tanks, quite a bit of heavy artillery, and advanced Chinese fighter aircraft since the turn of the 21st century. India, meanwhile...
I want to say something. This is something I feel in the last years of war. It seems to me, I might be terribly wrong here, you cannot really judge a war before it happens. You will think that Russia destroys Ukraine. Look what happened. A lot of war in the world nowadays is a lot of propaganda, hearsay, fake news. It's like, oh yeah, on paper India should win, but one thing I learned is from a lot of wars, you cannot really predict shit like this. I think the only thing you can predict is that the USA will crush everyone. I think so, but like India versus Pakistan, you really cannot make any predictions. How quickly after 3 days you see, oh, their equipment is breaking down, oh, they did a big mistake. It's such a complex thing, war, that you really cannot, in my opinion, predict who's gonna do well and stuff like that. Let's be honest, Chad, we all thought Russia is gonna destroy Ukraine. We all thought that, but Russia made a fool of themselves. They looked ridiculous. You never know. You never know.
Its military.
This is why I'm not that super afraid of China. I think China is a big paper tiger. I might be very wrong, but I think if there will be World War III, China would very quickly be like, holy shit, these Americans are fucking us up.
Years fielding an aircraft carrier,
because communism, right? Lots
combat
of
jets and
dictatorships like Russia, they lie a lot, right? It's a lot of, yeah, Putin, we're ready to take Ukraine. Sure, Putin, if I say something else, you're gonna kill me. So yeah, let's attack Ukraine. They're not honest and shit.
A small but significant number of other advanced pieces of military hardware, along with a high volume of older weapons and vehicles. Notably, both sides have enhanced their delivery mechanisms for nuclear weapons, meaning that if either side does choose to escalate toward a nuclear exchange, each side will need to treat the other's capabilities with immense care in order to avoid provoking a first strike. Again, it is not likely that a nuclear exchange will happen over the course of this conflict, but we are talking about a direct confrontation between two nuclear-armed nations. An exchange simply cannot be ruled out completely. As for what happens next, that choice appears to be in India's hands for now. The nation has largely ignored calls by other countries and international organizations, including the UN, to de-escalate, and Modi's preparations over the last few days would indicate that he and his inner circle
I honestly don't pay much attention to news right now.
Limited exchange.
I don't even know what's going on.
How far India will go, nobody except Modi himself.
Nobody wins in war. I disagree with that. There's winners in war.
Critically, 100%. India does have a precedent for responding.
No updates, really, nothing's happening.
In 2016, an attack killed 19 Indian soldiers, and in retaliation, India launched
FIFA's on sale. Clubs coming back.
Targets on the Pakistani side of the Kashmir line of control. In 2019, at least 40 Indian paramilitaries were killed, and again, India's response came by way of airstrikes, although on that occasion, Indian and Pakistani pilots got into a dogfight over the region. Although a wider war was averted in both instances, and that is a reason for limited optimism, the precedent also makes it difficult for India not to launch airstrikes, this time as a bare minimum.
Too many questions and shit. I want to stay with the focus, finish the video.
And the scale and scope of India's response thus far suggest that
the guy's throat is annoying. Yeah, let's not really care about his content here, Dave. Let's care about his throat. Very educated
India, if the nation is interested in a resolution that does not start a full-scale war, is the possibility of a covert operation inside Pakistan or Pakistani Kashmir. Those could target known militant bases or other concentrations of Lashkar-e-Taiba fighters or assets, or it could target the Pakistani military or its intelligence services, depending on the message that India wants to send and the intended severity of that message when it arrives. Alternately, India could engage in cross-border shelling, targeting either uninhabited areas for purely symbolic purposes or targets associated to either non-state militants or the military proper. Finally, it could engage in wider airstrikes, either with aircraft or cruise missiles, but counterweight a higher volume of strikes or the selection of higher-powered munitions by targeting irrelevant or minimally important locations. Or India can launch an attack that will lead to wider conflict, demonstrating its willingness to challenge Pakistan directly and then leaving it up to Pakistan to either back down or retaliate in kind. The problem with even limited strikes, however, is that they can very easily be misinterpreted or received by Pakistan in a way that India doesn't anticipate. Depending on what India does and how Pakistan reacts, there's no telling whether even a carefully calibrated symbolic attack could lead to a much larger exchange. Indeed, there's no telling that Pakistan will even wait for India to act first. With India seeming to be on the warpath, Pakistan may choose to act first and gain an advantage if the nation's leaders believe that a more significant conflict is in store. It's the same dynamic that we've seen play out within just the last year between Israel and Iran. Strikes can be carefully prepared to send a specific message, but there are no guarantees that the message will be received as intended. There is, however, room for de-escalation on both sides. Pakistan has the option to institute its own crackdowns in Kashmir, identifying and prosecuting militants or potentially even cooperating with India in its investigations. To be clear, that's not likely to happen, but it is an option.
Yeah, the good thing is probably not likely to happen.
Either the United States or China to help mediate the situation, or it can decline to strike back in the event that
what
India
happens if
attacks,
India uses the street as a weapon? GG, man. Even I will give up.
India could opt for a long-term retaliation rather than a short-term strike, deciding instead to manipulate the waters of the Kashmir region, build dams over the next few years, and
can't do it. Stop always discussing with random strangers on the internet. It's such a loser thing to do, buddy.
Before letting the crisis calm down naturally with time and making a graceful exit from this cycle of escalation. Unfortunately, the more likely scenario is that de-escalation talk is wishful thinking. If the reports on India's diplomatic efforts are accurate, then the nation may strike Pakistan within days, it may strike within hours, or by the time you're watching this, that strike might already happened. All indicators are that India intends to treat this situation with grave seriousness, and its decision to take retaliatory steps Delhi has stayed away from for decades.
The world is very globalized. We all work together. Everything is connected. And this type of thinking that I don't care about this, I'm European, you shouldn't talk about Trump because you're not in the US, is terribly uneducated foolishness.
Would suggest that this...
Anyway, okay, we're a bit informed now about that shit. Pakistan, India.
This video was
far away, so who cares? And yeah, you guys will... Maybe that's the problem? Yeah, globalized world is the problem. Yeah, we should all be isolated and hate each other and kill each other like no.
She slipped through my fingers like sand. Heard that she got a man. Now I'm just sitting here sad. Oh well, ship sail. She slipped through my fingers like sand.